Well, welcome everybody. I am Juan Carlos Bernal, and I am here with Pamela.
Hello.
Hi, there she is.
Hi. How are you?
This is great. It's good to be here. Um, I congratulate you for stopping into our webinar. I think it's fantastic when couples take time, or at least one of them, the partners take time to spend some time getting information on how to make their marriage better. I think that's always so fantastic. I mean, everything that we do, we practice. Everything that, if we, well, welcome everybody. I am Juan Carlos Bernal. If we're practicing to become golfers, even if it's amateur, the amount of time we spend is ridiculous because it's just hitting that little ball is so awkward. And yet, in the most important venture that we go into in our lives, which is probably our marriage, we hardly spend any time to find out more information, how to do it better, how to make that. Do you find that also the same, Pamela?
That putting the time into it is key.
Well,
Yeah.
not only that it's not done as much as it should, right?
Well, I think people have the feeling that if it's just not going smoothly, naturally, that somehow there is something wrong with them, and they don't even want to approach putting the time in. When in reality, it's sort of a project that you have to keep working on. And if you don't understand that, then no, most people don't put the time in necessary, either because they don't need to, or they might be afraid to, or there's a lot of reasons why. But no.
And that's great that you brought that up because one of the things I want to let you know today is that there is hope. It doesn't matter where your marriage is. You could have a good marriage, you could have a mediocre marriage, or you could be really at the end of the rope, right? It doesn't matter. There is hope. And both Pamela and myself have worked for many years with couples, and we know the results. We know what could happen. We know the transformations that there could be when a couple decides to work on their marriage. And I guess what I want to do is, have you tell us a little bit about what your work experience has been throughout these 15 years.
Well, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I have worked with couples and with families for that amount of time. I really like throw some big words around, I guess, but I like to use a systems approach when I'm working with couples because in my experience, the main thing is it's a very dynamic system, and so what one person does really affects what the other person does. If you don't like what's going on, you can try to change the other person. It usually doesn't go very well. But if you change yourself, you generally definitely get a result. Um,
And we always have the power to do that, right?
right. We can always change ourselves. It would be nice if we could change other people, but in my experience, that's pretty not effective. And I've worked with couples who want to they're just sort of feeling not so excited about their relationship, and I've worked with couples who are really ready to throw in the towel, and really didn't see any way out. People come to looking for help in a variety of circumstances. I use sort of a systems approach, and I like to take some ideas from imago-based therapy, which is something I can talk about later, but that's sort of this idea that we pick people who can actually really make it hard for us, but also can really make it possible for us to grow, is sort of the upside of that. And people frequently do that on purpose. They don't realize it, but we really tend to pick people who are going to bring out these certain issues. And so there's something very dynamic in how that goes back and forth between people in a couple. So that's what I work on.
And that's awesome. And for myself, I've been working with couples probably for the past 25 years in some sort of role or another. In the past years, I've been working in the coaching arena. And one of the things that I have realized is the impact that it has on the couple. And like Pamela, I've worked with a variety of couples that come in for help in different areas. And the end result is incredible. And You know what's amazing is that it doesn't take that much. What it takes is a little bit of effort from both parties, knowing what to do. A lot of times the effort is so discoordinated that one is doing one thing, the other one's doing the other, and they're both arguing that they're doing everything they can to make the other one happy, and that's not even close, right? And it's when we align them and they start seeing things in the same light, it's amazing what happens. How they start all of a sudden changing the dynamics of the relationship. And with that, I guess what I want to do is tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. Today we're going to be talking, the webinar is going to be answering a few questions that we have that probably a lot of the couples, you know, they either cross their mind or right now are going right through it, you know. Is it possible for me to fall in love with this person again after all this pain and hurt and all that that's going on, you know? Is it possible to restore that? Is it possible to that even if I married the wrong person, the wrong guy or the wrong gal, would I be able to make this work? And questions like that sometimes we think there is no answer and we're afraid of asking them. And what we're going to do is dive into that and go from it a root and branch approach. And what is the root and branch approach? For us, for Pamela and myself, we developed this program coming from the coaching and from the psychotherapy. Pamela has been working with couples with psychotherapy for many, many years, over 15 years, and she has seen the results from that. And I have worked with couples in the coaching area, and I've seen the results from that. And we came together, and I started coaching Pamela and her business and things that she needed to work out for her business. And as we did, I started asking her some psychological questions about myself taking advantage of my client, right? And it was amazing what I came up with. It was like, wow, there's certain things that you just gave me that I've been working on through coaching for many years, and I just haven't been able to break through or been able to break away from these habits or these things. And through psychotherapy, it's been amazing. It's been amazing what I've been able to do. And we sat down and we said, what if we took your expertise in psychotherapy and my expertise in coaching and put them together into a program that would go, once again, branches, the coaching part, roots, the psychological part, and do the root and branch part so that we can work the exterior parts of our marriage and make it work, you know, for where you are right now to where you want to be, and then find out what are the things that are not working, and then dive into the root part of it with psychotherapy and be able to manage that. And I think it came with this fantastic program, and at the end we're going to talk a little bit about it. It's going to give you more insight of what it's all about and how you can participate in it and be a part of it, and we'll share a little bit of where we're going to be holding and hosting different programs. And we would want you to, you know, be a part of us, be a part of our team. We're always available for questions and answer and so on. So make sure you stick around, you get our emails, get our connections. Below you'll find our information and our phone numbers and our websites and all that. So you know, stick with us, stick to the end. You're going to get a lot of information and a lot of good stuff. I'm also going to be giving you an offer at the end that you can take advantage of. So stick around, and with that, we want to get started. And I don't know if you have anything else that you want to throw in before we dive right into it.
No, I think that was pretty descriptive. I think I'll just add, just so people have a framework of what the root and branch is. I think you described the branch part pretty well. The sort of that exterior stuff that can be, you know, pruned and worked on, and things can bloom and look really nice. The branch stuff, the root stuff tends to be, well, that deeper, darker stuff that doesn't necessarily show, and it's the place where sometimes people aren't even aware of what's going on with themselves, and I guess that's why we're using that that root metaphor, because you can't see what's going on underground, but it's definitely affecting the whole organism, which is your marriage. So that's all I have to add about that.
That's good, and I think it's so true. Um, Once again, I think it's the combination that makes it work. Okay, so
Yeah.
if that's about it, but then we'll get started right with the conference with the information that you have. And why don't you shoot the first questions? I know you had a whole bunch of questions for me, and if we could start that way we can just tackle them.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this one. We know that most people don't actually get divorced because of those really big dramatic issues that people think of. The things like infidelity, physical abuse, deceit, criminal behavior. You'd think these would be some of the big pushes, but they're actually not. So why do people generally get divorced then?
Yeah, that's really not fair. I shouldn't have given you the first question, right? But it is so true. When people come to us, they rarely come with these huge conflicts. It's usually the main thing you hear is a sense of neglect, if you will. Neglect and emotional abuse are the things that couples tend to divorce the most for. That's said correctly. Um, there is something about being abandoned, feeling that sense I'm not loved anymore, a sense of he doesn't care or she doesn't care. I don't get the respect. I don't get the acknowledgement. I don't get that sense that I belong to him or to her. There is something that we need as couples that is this bond that it's created when we start our marriage. And that bond starts like forming, intertwining one with the other, and when that's not there, when it breaks away, it creates this sense of neglect, this sense of abandonment, of not being loved. And I think that's the main reason probably people get divorced, is because they're not having their needs met at the level that they need to be met. And
What kind of needs are we talking about?
well, for each one of us is very different, like, and I'll give you an example. For instance, if we have a wife that likes to communicate, usually with women, that's a big one, right? The communication part. But the husband is very service-oriented. He's like doing things, and he's fixing the house, and he's doing the lawn, and he's washing the cars, and he even does dishes once in a while. He does all this, but fails to have a good communication with her. She's going to feel neglected. And when they come into the office, his response is going to be, "But I do everything. I provide. I wash the cars. I take care of the kids. I do all this." And she says, "He doesn't pay attention to me." And you see that, and from seeing it from the outside, it's very clear. But they're in that dynamic that they can't see it. That he's missing the point. That he's not communicating with her in the way that she receives love. And that's the part that creates that sense of neglect. You know? If a guy needs admiration and he requires for his wife to tell him how well he's done and how good of a father he is, and instead criticizing him for certain things, then what happens is that he feels neglected. He feels that abandoned. He feels not loved. He's not doing enough. And as guys, there is that problem as it is, that we feel that we never get to do enough. No matter what we do, the wife is always asking for more, and that's our challenge. I think that's as guys, we need that. We need that challenge from our wives. But it's hard also if we don't understand where she's coming from. What is she really demanding? What is she really asking for? So that we can respond in a proper way. So the first thing that I guess we would need to do in order to prevent these problems is to find out what are those needs that she has. What are the needs that he has? How do we do that? Because if we're taking the marriage as a plant, and we have those sunshine, and we have the water, and we have the fertilizer, and we have all these nutrients that make these plants strong and grow. If we use any of the wrong things in these areas, we're going to damage the tree. And too much sunlight for some plants, it's not good. Too much water for some of them, it's not good. At the same time, if you don't water them enough, for those that need it, that's not good. So we need to find out what kind of plant do we have? What kind of marriage do we have? How does she respond to my loving? And how does he respond to her loving? And together come up with a plan that would make the marriage work and make it practical. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Do you think people have the idea that, if I do what I like, then that should be good enough for you? Right?
Definitely.
Do you think that's what happens?
That's the biggest problem. I come into my marriage, for instance, if you're a guy's usually big need is sex, and his thing is, as long as he gives her good sex, she should be happy. But if what she's looking for is intimacy or communication or service or any of the other needs that she may have, he may not be connecting, and then she's not giving him the sex that he needs. And all of a sudden they have a problem, and they don't even know how to fix it. This is what's amazing, is that couples will go years doing this without realizing that they haven't even figured out what is it that makes my wife or my husband happy. What does he need from me? Does that make sense?
So with that in mind, well, let me ask you this. People say the most important thing some people say the most important thing for a marriage is this good communication. What do you think of that?
I guess
is that the big solution, or not really?
Right into that. Yeah, communication. I was just talking about how important it is for women. And I think there is not a single retreat, a single book on marriage, a single anything taught that speaks about marriage that doesn't bring up the communication issue. And you have to learn how to communicate and do it well. The reality is that people that communicate very well also get divorced. It's not about the communication. It's about what you communicate. How does that happen? If the other needs are not met, if you're not in sync with your husband and your wife, just talking for the sake of talking, it's not going to do it. That communication creates a stronger bond when you know what he needs and what she needs. When you're satisfying their needs, each other's needs. And if her need is communication, then you better sit down and spend some time with her, listening to her and acknowledging her needs and what she's, what is it, how many thousands of words that a woman needs to say a day? You better sit down and listen. And the same thing for her with him. The whole communication is picking up what is it that he needs. It's not just sitting down and having a conversation, but like communicating in a sense of, I know what he needs. I know that he needs space right now because he just got here from work, he's tired, he has all this, and I'm not going to just throw all the kids on him. You see, just because I've fed up with the kids all day long and I just want to get dump him. He might need 5 minutes to cover and come around, And communication is letting her know that, and communication is for her to understand and listen and say, okay, I get it. But like half hour after you come in, just do something for me. Give me a break. I need to unwind also. And that might be with a conversation, or it might just be with a long hot bath, right? For each one of us is so different. And I think communication comes in, it's very important when we use it properly, when we use it to communicate what is it that we need from each other so that we can satisfy each other's needs. And the other thing is that it could be so different, right? That my needs may be so different from her needs, and her needs may be so different from mine, that sometimes it's like you said before, I'm trying to meet your needs with what I'm doing and with how I behave, and that's not getting anywhere. Does that make sense?
So if I might be a great communicator, but if I'm applying my skills in the wrong area, or I'm not backing it up with the right actions because I've actually heard the important parts, then it doesn't work as well as you're thinking it will.
Right, and I think here the question is to be able to answer is what does she need? What does he need in order for us to have a better marriage? I don't
Mhm.
think we ask that question enough. We just hope that it happens, and we expect it. We expect for him to know exactly what I need or what she needs, you know, and for him is the same. She should know what I need. I shouldn't have to tell her my needs. I think that's so far from the truth that a lot of marriages are broken up. And to be honest, a lot of people come into divorce court and they don't even know why they're getting divorced. They don't understand it. They're like blown away that this person is filing for divorce and they still don't understand why. And it's because they never took the time to ask, what do you need from me? What is it that generates that loving feeling uh, in you for me? You know, what does that? Because the reality is that we generate that, we create that on the other person, and when we don't do that, the opposite happens. You know, we get stale, we lose that bonding, that connection, and we start falling apart.
Mhm. So, so in that case, is it possible for people to fall in love again, to rekindle their marriage, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's this is what's so fantastic, especially nowadays. We test everything. Everything is it's like a science. We know even love is a science nowadays. We know exactly what needs to happen for a person to fall in love. You know, there are certain things, and what happens is that we do it unconsciously when we get started. First, when we start dating and we start, we spend hours on the phone and having conversations and deep conversations, and all of a sudden, guys are really talkative and they're very expressive and they talk about their feelings and they have all a very good communication. And the women obviously are very sensitive and very touchy feely and they love them. And this creates this connection that we call love that eventually just happens that we fall in love and we are so head over heels over you that we decide to get married. What happens is once we get married, dynamics change. You know, especially when those few kids start coming in, right? When the kids start showing up, the whole dynamic changes. You know, she's not as sexual as she used to be when we first got married. You know, she has a whole bunch of other issues going around. She has 3 kids running around. And he's working harder. He's not no longer around us much, and what happens is if we don't care for those things, we start losing that sense of love, that feeling, that loving feeling that we have inside of us that's there when we first get married. We start losing that. How do we generate that again? Well, first of all, it can be generated. It can be done again. What we need to find out is what do you need from me today? Not when we got married, because that might have changed. There might be a few differences. We might be at a different stage in our lives. You might be in a different place. And I need to reconnect with you in that aspect every so often. Like, be constantly finding out what do you need from me so that I can supply that need. A lot of times what happens is these needs are starting to be met by other people or other things. You know, so a guy might start meeting his needs with a secretary, or with a lot of work, or with his friends, or with any other things that are supplying that need or meeting that need, I should say, that should be met by his wife. The wife, on the other hand, is doing the same thing. She's having the conversations and she's having this all these relationships outside of her husband. Well, what starts happening is they start growing apart. That has to stop. At some point, somebody has to say, we need to get back to what we were. You know, we need to reconnect. We need to start doing the things that we require of each other in order for me to fall in love with you again and for you to fall in love with me again. I think that's a daily thing. It's not something that we just do once and that's it. You fell in love with me and you're hooked. It's not. I think on a daily basis we have to behave in a way that causes our mate to fall in love with us. And I think that's our biggest challenge, whether you be male or female or a wife or a husband. The biggest challenge we have is to stay in love every single day and have her or have him fall in love with you. That combination, like a no failure. Now, where you might be right now, you might be saying, yeah, because you have no clue where we're at right now. Obviously, we have to start not from zero. You're probably at a negative, and you have to start, moving up towards zero and gravitating from there and start making some plans and making adjustments in your marriage so that this loving feeling comes back and we start seeing this. And I've seen it, by the way. This is not something that I'm making up. I've seen people being married for 20, 30 years and have absolutely no interest in each other, having affairs, doing horrible things in their marriage, and they come to counseling, to coaching, and I see their results afterwards, and I hear them say, these past months, years, depending on when I speak to them, have been the best years of our marriage. And you're going, wow, so many years that they lost, that they did harm to each other, that they hurt, and all this, and all of a sudden, these are the best years of their lives. It's possible, and we can fall in love with our spouses again. That's a definite yes. I guess that was a long answer. Sorry about that.
The long answer is always good. So if there's specific things that we can do positively for the marriage, are there specifically negative things that if you do them, you can basically guarantee to cause yourself certain kinds of trouble?
That's a good question because once again, we think that just because you're satisfied and you're okay, that the other person should be okay. And I'm sure you hear it also, Pamela, is that sense, I don't have a problem, she has a problem, or vice versa. I don't have a problem, he has a problem. And the reality is that just because we don't experience that problem, don't have that problem, doesn't mean that the marriage doesn't have a problem. And yes, there are certain things that really, on an ongoing basis, can damage a marriage that takes them to just that, like I was talking before, of getting you to that loving feeling, increasing until you just are madly in love. Some of these feelings could really get you to the point where I'm really having a hard time even looking at you today. And I think neglect is the big one. When we fail to pay attention to our spouse, it's always a problem. Always creates this emptiness inside of us that we go around, we don't even know what it is. So my thought in that is, like, pay attention to each other on a daily basis. Like, do something specific for your spouse that she or he will recognize that you're paying attention, that you do still love them. And it may not be telling them that you love them, it may not be having sex with them. Find out, how is it that she or he experiences that sense of belonging, of being loved by you? Because when we continually overwork and go 8 hours a day without reconnecting with our spouse, when we get home and we just don't even acknowledge the fact that we've been separated for 10, 12, 15 hours, and we just continue our routine like if nothing, eventually that neglect gets inside of us, and it's very hard to get rid of. The other is the selfish demands. There's a lot of demands that we put on our spouses, like, just because I need them, I don't care how you feel, I need it, And for a guy, it could be, for instance, sex. I don't care, I need sex every day, and it doesn't matter. But he's not willing to do anything to engage her so that she feels good about it. So it's just a selfish demand. And for her, it's always, it could be the same, I don't care if you can't communicate, if you have about your feelings and all that, but you just need to sit and listen to me and all that. Well, the demands, when they come in that manner, and you're trying to satisfy your needs in that manner, that creates this hurtful feeling inside of us that it's kind of hard to get rid of. and then disrespect sets in, you know, and we just, especially guys, when we're put in a position where we need to communicate, for instance, and we don't know how to communicate, and they ask us, how do you feel about that? And we really don't feel about that, and women don't understand, and they expect us to, and we react in a disrespectful manner instead of acknowledging that I actually don't have an answer, and I'm kind of needing your help here. We disrespect each other, and we either call names, or we insults, or whatever. Each one of these things are stored in our heart, and it takes away from that loving feeling. And it's like taking a whack at the branches, you know, eliminating branches, eliminating the leaves on the tree, you know, and where it really hurts after a while, where you see the trees all, you know, bare and no leaves on it, and well, if you're not getting nutrients into those roots, pretty soon that's going to be affecting you. Also, the bad habits. We have this tendency, well, that's how she met me and that's how I was. Well, change that, for heaven's sakes. Change. I'm always into, we do have habits and we do come with a whole bunch of things, but we can change people. We're humans and we're able to be the person. So, change the other person. Don't find out what habit that your part, and modify them so that they don't affect your marriage. One of the things I learned in my marriage, I was married 27 years before my wife passed away, and we had a tremendous marriage. And one of the things that we worked on every single day of our marriage was changing, trying to see what do I need to change to make this marriage better. And it was selfish. I admit it. It was selfish. The happier she was, the happier I was. The more I enjoyed my marriage, the happier I was, the better everything went around. So it's not something that you would do this and regret. When we provide love for our spouse, we that change them. And in our case, we did that. We did that change to the other, because when she saw me change, she also wanted to change. And some things took longer. Yeah, some things took longer for me to change, and I think I still got a whole bunch of things that I would need to change for any relationship. But it's part of our life. To think that we're it, that's it, we have nothing to change, that creates a problem. And those are probably the main ones I would talk. The other ones would be the isolation, that doing each whatever they want. I think it's a big one. It's something that, I go out with the guys and I do whatever, and she goes out with the girls and does whatever. That creates a separation that nowadays I see it happening, and it's a problem waiting to happen, and obviously the emotional abuse is a big one, when we don't care for the feelings of the other person, when we don't acknowledge them, and we don't pay attention to how they're feeling and why they're feeling what they're feeling, regardless if we're capable of handling them or not. Just acknowledging them and validating them is so important. And I see that often where one of the two would say, it's just that I tell him something and immediately, he'll respond very defensively. And I'm great at that. That's probably one of the biggest deficiency I had in my marriage, was that defensive attitude of I couldn't take a correction, or I couldn't take everything, that without lashing back and saying, well, it's your fault that I'm acting. And it creates a lot of separation, because the other person doesn't feel acknowledged, doesn't feel validated for anything that they do or any feelings that they have. And I guess those are the main ones that I would say. But once again, this is all the branch part. I like to hear a little bit about your side. What would you say are those things that can people just work? And we've spoken so much about this that I guess that's the question I would want. Why can't people just work on this area, this branch area? How is it that the marriage is working and all that? Why are the deeper issues so important?
Well, It would be great if we could just work on the branch part, because those are the parts that are easier to see, and they're those parts really have a big effect, and they're a little bit more straightforward to work on, and they're a little more concrete. So I find that I think that maybe men sometimes find that a little more palatable because there's nice instructions you can sort of follow. Unfortunately, apart from the fact that there's a lot of really universal things that apply, I think, to men and to women that you're very good at sorting out. People have their own individual baggage that they bring to their lives, to their relationships, that have to do with, frequently have to do with where they've come from, their own family of origin, their own past experiences and relationships, and it tends to have this sort of invisible but very intense effect on how people show up in the relationship. And so if you don't have a handle on what your own issues are, and if you don't have a handle on what your partner's personal issues are, it's going to be really hard for you to be patient with them, to help them, and it's going to be hard for you to kind of like get over yourself long enough to do some of these branch things, right? Like I could be asking you to do, one thing or another that will really clean things up pretty quickly, but if you have something under the surface that is very intense, it's going to make it hard for you to follow through on what I'm saying. I might have a fabulous suggestion, but you're not going to be able to follow it if you've got something deeper stopping you from doing that, besides just what's going on in your relationship.
So what I'm hearing you say is that some of this root work, some of this deeper areas can prevent the branch stuff, the practical aspect that we as guys love so much, right? Just bring your flowers on Wednesday for it to flow and for it to work. So how do we handle these deeper issues? What do we need to do? How are we supposed to work on them?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to handle it, and it kind of depends on what's going on. I mean, there's a couple of really top of the list things that need to be looked at before you can even begin. If there's any type of addiction going on, that really has to be addressed. It's very, very hard to show up in any aspect of your own life, especially these intimate areas of your partner, of your spouse. If you've got an addiction standing between yourself and the rest of the world, that can be alcohol, that can be drugs, that can be even things that are not chemical, pornography addiction, gambling, food addiction, all kinds of things.
That's been
yeah, pornography addiction really. Sorry, I'm not hearing you well.
Oh, go ahead. I was just listening.
Yeah, no, the pornography addiction is really something that really blocks, regardless of your opinion about pornography, what I know about it relationally is that it really blocks people's ability to be intimate, and it actually causes difficulty with men with sexual performance. So it's a pretty actually real issue. It's not just a thing that maybe you shouldn't do or whatever.
Yeah. What about like things like work, for instance? I always find that the wives, you will hear them say, well, he's a workaholic. Is there such a thing?
Indeed, I would say that there is. Anything that a person is using as a buffer between themselves and how they feel is something that you can really get addicted to. Now, of course, we all do sort of things in one way or another that are sort of mild, and there's lots of self-care things that, of course, people should do, and that will help us with how we feel. But when we're actually using something to separate us so we don't have to deal with how we feel about ourselves or our lives or whatever might be going And we do it to the extent that it is at the expense of everything else in our lives. That's sort of one of the markers when you know you've crossed the line. If it's at the expense, you're really, now you're doing harm by being so devoted to this one thing. And you can say, oh, well, I'm just working. Well, it's great to be a worker. It's great to work hard. It's great to be engaged in a career. It's great to be, passionate and committed about something. But when you start doing harm, real harm, to other areas of your life, and you're not really interested in hearing about it, that is sort of an indicator.
So then, like shopaholic, then I guess that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You can really do harm to your relationship by spending all your time shopping online.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is that a lot of this personal stuff needs to be taken care of first, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the addiction has to be addressed first, and also, if to create a safe platform to dive into some of this more difficult stuff, there can't be violence going on in the home. You can't be under the threat, the specter of violence. If that's going on, that's something where you might need some really immediate intervention. And you don't necessarily have to, people have this idea that you have to drop the relationship, drop the marriage if there's going something, if there's violence going on. That isn't necessarily the case. But you can't be in physical danger and let your guard down emotionally at the same time. Okay? And
it's hard to think when you're in fear, I guess.
Right. If the fear parts of your brain are activated all the time, which is what goes on, there's not a chance that you're going to be able to get into any of this. It's not safe emotionally, and it actually can reinforce whatever trauma people might be experiencing. So, sometimes a period of separation can be indicated or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean the situation is hopeless, not by any stretch. But certain things really need to happen. That's sort of a baseline, okay, before you even get into any of this stuff. Those things really need to be clear. And the other thing, both people have to be on board with working on this deeper stuff. I think with some of the branch stuff, even if one person isn't really engaged, you can kind of start doing some things on your own, and that will sort of affect the dynamic in your relationship, and you can sort of see where you're at. But to get into this very deep stuff, if you're the only one on board, it's not really emotionally safe to do that either. So you might want to start with the branch stuff first. But those things in place, then there's some very particular things we can get into.
Okay, then that makes so much sense. Now, I could just hear the wives out there, saying, well, I'm going to start doing all this branch stuff. I'm going to start working on practical things. I'm going to start doing. But what if he's the wrong guy? What if I made a mistake?
Absolutely.
Question asked,
I married the wrong person. What have I done? Here's the thing with that. I think most people at some point get to a point where they say that to themselves. At one moment or another in their marriage, they say, what have I done? Did I pick the wrong person? And that is a feeling, it's a thought that comes, and I think it's normal, but it isn't necessarily an indicator of reality, okay? We feel things that, feelings are important, but that doesn't make them reality. So, if you're feeling that way, it's more of a flag that is telling you, okay, some things, you need to be sorting some things out so that you can be more happy and comfortable in your relationship. One of the things that really can happen is that people, especially people who have had some kind of trauma in their background, and by trauma I don't necessarily mean that you went to war and you can't, and that's very serious, but that's not the only type of person who can experience trauma. If you have had a physically abusive childhood, emotionally abusive childhood, if there was any kind of sort of emotional deep emotional coldness in the family, where all your physical needs were met, but not really your emotional needs. These are all traumatic experiences in different ways, and it takes some doing to get in there. But if that's the experience of one partner, it's frequently the experience of the other. And what usually happens is this: we find a person, and they're just it's like magic. You've known them forever, and you just know it, and you love them, and you need to be with them, and you talk, and everything is wonderful. And what's happening there is that person is reflecting qualities of caregivers that they had in their own experiences growing up that were really positive for them, really beautiful, positive memories associated with them. And this is all totally unconscious, by the way. It's not like you're thinking this to yourself, but this is usually what's happening underneath the surface. And you're doing the same thing for them. You know, they remind you of these wonderful things, and you remind them of these wonderful things, and everything just, you know, feels perfect and beautiful. And that goes on for a while, and then there's a moment where things start to kind of, you know, cross, and things sort of flip to the other side of that, which is, you know, and usually it's because some of these branch things aren't happening, and then people sort of like fall into a hole, and they're really spiraling downward, and they have a very hard time getting out. But what happens is you start doing the very, very things that are the worst nightmare you could possibly produce emotionally for the other person.
And this is the same people that you were experiencing all this love just 5 minutes ago, if you will.
Yes, yeah, they were absolute perfection at the beginning, and now they are the opposite of that. They are absolutely your worst nightmare. They are your worst relational nightmare, and they are for you, and you are for them. And you start doing things that are the things that emotionally provoke them the most, and they're doing that to you, and so now you're absolutely you know, back and forth, and the spiral is very intense. The dynamic is very intense. The fear that is generated is so deep because it's really life or death. Because when you're a kid, if the people taking care of you aren't doing their job, you really could die, right? And it's that deep and it's that serious. So when we have this sensation revived in our relationship, you feel like you're going to die. And so at that moment, you say, I have married the wrong person because my life is like this unbearable nightmare, and I've married them, and that's frequently when people get to that moment.
Now, what I'm trying to say that this is something that that could be worked through once we realize where we're at. And what
yes. Because the bond is very intense in a relationship like that, and on the one hand, people are really motivated to stay together. On the other hand, the pain it creates is so intense that people don't know what to do with it, and it seems like you have come to an absolutely unworkable impasse. And that's when people are ready to throw in the towel. You're really at an impasse. You cannot do for them the thing that they need from you. You can't, because of your own issues. And they can't do for you the very thing that you need the most because of their own issues. So it really is. You really are, you know, between a rock and a hard place there. The good news.
I've heard you say before that the spouse could be one of the big catalysts to help in this.
Right. Because the good news with that, with this whole dynamic, it sounds horrible and awful. But the really good news is that it actually, it's a platform for tremendous growth. If you can sort of get on board with really digging in and doing the work on this, you can each help each other. The marriage bond can be a very healing sort of vehicle for both partners. And when you start, instead of sort of like injuring each other over and over again, you start healing, taking a healing action for the other person. It can really resolve this in a way that people actually people don't make as much progress in individual therapy. You can do individual therapy and you can work on stuff, but truly, when you're working with another person, when you're working with your partner on this really, really deep stuff that gets provoked, the progress, it's like exponential. The progress that a person can make working with their partner on this, you can really, release things that can take a very long time in individual therapy to try to sort out sort of in a vacuum by yourself.
So I'm hearing you say that it's not just a marriage.
No, it's really it's a partnership and an agreement for each person's individual growth and like transformation as sort of a human on the planet. It's really that important. It's that big.
Now, I'm hearing all this, and I could see some people thinking, "Well, that sounds all so hard and so difficult." How do we get started doing any of that work?
Well, the important thing is first you really need to know what's going on. I don't really think if you're in that space, I really don't know anybody that could possibly sort of magically, independently pull themselves out of that.
Okay.
You really need the perspective of somebody else to help you see what's going on, to help, I have a workshop that I do individually with couples that really is sort of a 2-day thing, and it takes that much time to teach the couple how to create this safer space and how to actually, enter each other's psychic space safely, so that they can, be agents of healing for each other rather than destruction. There are ways to do it, but I don't really recommend trying to do that unsupervised.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess that will bring us to the point of, how do we get started? And at the beginning, I promised you that I would tell you a little bit about our program and what is it that we do, what we, meaning me, Pamela and myself, came up with to offer you that you can get started doing some of this work, both the branch and the root side of it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the program?
Well, with the workshop that we do, the root part is really about digging in and sort of identifying what are the real problems, where are you stuck, and which approach is going to work for you. You need to find out if there's going to be some of these sort of first line stuff. Is there addiction going on? We need to sort of assess that. Is there violence in the home? We need to assess that. Beyond that, there's different interventions. There is a workshop specifically that I offer, but there's other kinds of therapy that a person can do. There are some specific techniques that I can teach, inside of a short workshop time. It kind of depends, but the main thing is really to identify, to what degree are people really suffering, and what are some of the root causes. There are 12-step programs that can help with this. It's important to understand what's going on so you know the right place to go for the right kinds of help. And it can be very dynamic. Sometimes a person needs to do some individual therapy, or they might need to do some individual work in a 12-step program, and then come back and say, okay, now I'm ready to show up in this relationship a little bit more, and now we can do some of this deeper work. It kind of depends, and so the purpose is to create a plan so you can see where you need to go. Yeah, because there's so much out there. It's very confusing for people to understand. Well, I tried this thing, and why doesn't that work? Well, the reason that works is it's easy for me to tell you to have it's easy for me to say, well, okay, your husband needs to be a little nicer, and now you have to be more willing to have sex with him, let's say. But if you're dealing with a sexual trauma history, I'm really asking you to do something that would maybe be harmful, and you need to be clear about what you need for emotional safety before I can ask you to do something like that, right? So these are the things we want to clarify so that people understand, well, okay, this is why this works for me and this is why this hasn't been working for me. There's a lot of confusion for people when they're trying to seek help.
And I think listening to Pamela, we could see that the root and branch dynamic, right? How from the coaching perspective, from my perspective, there's so much to work on as far as on the practical that we obviously can't just ignore. And at the same time, there's all the root side that needs to work, you know, where we need to spend some time finding out what is it. What we have put together is a program. Our marriage workshop is a program that takes these two disciplines and combines them in a way that empowers the marriage to be able to not only discover the things that they could do on a practical level, but also start finding out some of these deeper root issues that are there, so that we take the branch side and we get them going on the first day, and we're going to talk a lot about some of the stuff that I spoke to you about before. What are his needs? What are her needs? What is it? How we meet them? How does that tree get fertilized and get stronger? And we do exercises that bring out that part of the couple so that they can strengthen each one. And we'll have plenty of time to communicate and plenty of time to do a lot of healing and a lot of work in the whole branch area so that we can have strong marriage moving forward. And obviously, Pamela is going to be there giving us the other side, right? The whole root area. If you could tell us a little bit about what that second day is all about.
Well, you know, the thing that I think is powerful about this entire sort of the structure as a whole, and again, I'm always very interested in how things work together dynamically, is that, you know, the coaching approach, the branch approach, it's really important because it keeps things sort of looking forward and positive, but you can miss things if that's the only thing that you're doing. And then the root work that I sort of described a little bit, but to really dig into, you know, what are my childhood issues? What's some of the baggage that I'm bringing into this relationship? What are some of the deeper things? What are the obstacles for me? I mean, that's really what it is, to find out what the obstacles are. What's going to stand between me and doing some of this branch stuff? You know, because the branch stuff is really important.
We don't even know that we really don't even know that they're there.
No.
And it would be very practical to start working on, like I said before, especially for us guys, right? Do some certain things on a daily basis, and that's going to get you to where you need to be. But if you don't even know these other deeper issues, it's impossible to even work on them. Right,
exactly. So they're going to have maybe some difficulty executing them if they don't know what their obstacles are, right? So this sort of deeper therapeutic stuff is really important, and to have an understanding of, oh, okay, this is where I need to go with this. But I think it's important to combine it with the branch stuff, because you can get mired in that dark stuff. You don't want to be only living in that space either. You really need both. You need to address both and to sort of live in both, to be able to have a nice healthy tree that is bearing fruit for you.
Right, and what we're going to do is at the end of these 2 days, we're going to give you a map, if you will,
right.
that gives us that, what is it that we do now? Where do we go from here? Right.
So that you have a clear idea about what you're spending your time on, where you're going to devote because everybody, you know, you only have so many hours in the day, so much time to devote to your marriage. People are already not devoting enough time because they feel under pressure. So you don't want to be wasting your time pursuing things that aren't really going to help you. We want to really create a really nice, clear roadmap for you so that you know what you need to be doing this week, next month, 6 months from now, a year from now. What are your goals, and are you on the right path for yourself, specifically for your marriage, you and your partner?
And I think it's so important to know that if we know where we're going, and we set out a clear path and a clear map, and like Pamela was saying, a roadmap that actually guides you. It's going to be so much help for you to, on a practical level, that that you're going to be able to do certain things that are going to get the marriage immediately starting to get transformed. And this is the power where we see our program, where we're just not going to give you a whole bunch of lectures where you're going to get there and leave, you know, all that much smarter about marriage. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is really to impact your marriage in a positive way, that you can start seeing that dream that you had for your marriage is possible. I know that. I know it's possible because I lived it. I know it's possible because I've worked with people that have been able to get there with help and with work. Yes, it's not something that just happens. Even the tree, we think we just plant it and it grows by itself. No, we need to nourish it. We need to take care of it. It needs the right sunlight. It needs the right fertilizer. It needs the right amount of water. It needs all these things in order to strengthen those roots underneath and make sure that they're not rotten, they're not having problems. And what we do in the program is work on both areas so that by the time you leave the workshop, you are with the tools needed to work immediately on your marriage. As a matter of fact, we start right there. You're going to be working both days during your lunch hours. We tell you to go out and get your own lunch, but you're not allowed to go with friends, or you have to work. And we're going to work through it so that even right after you're done with the 2 days, you already have some work started, some work done. So this is not a theoretical talks that we're going to be giving. This is going to be very practical and very life-changing, if you will. I don't know if there's something else you want to talk about as far as the conference itself. We are. Let me switch back here. We're giving it here in Miami. We're going to be in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we're going to be in the New York, New Jersey area, the Tri-City area. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that we had spoken about, and one of the things we want to do is for everybody that signs up from coming out of the webinar to be able to give something. I always love doing something for people that take immediate action, that take steps. And Pamela and myself spoke, and we said, let's give $100 discount. You know, that's pretty impressive. I don't like percentages and all that, because then you got to calculate. You just put $100 in your pocket and you use it for to spend it on your wife or your husband. But come and enjoy these 2 days that are going to be transforming for your life. And what I'm going to show you now is, and if you don't mind, Pamela, I'm going to hop over into the page.
Sure.
Where I'm going to show you a little bit where to go in order to get the, if you see here, if you go to Root and Branch for Couples /discount, it's going to get you into this page. This page already has the regular price is $697. Right there is a $100 discount. Once you hit the PayPal button, if you're not a PayPal member, it doesn't matter. If you click here, it'll take you into the PayPal account, and from here you just check out instead of the PayPal, and you're able to do it. And if you notice right there, the discount, it will already show, and you're able to book your seat already. It's very limited, the seating, because we don't want to work with that many couples, because it's going to be both of us working together on hands-on, if you will. And what we want to do is be able to give you the support that you need as we walk through and each one of the exercises and each one of the time that we spend. So we're not making, we're going to be closing it off to enough people that we can work with. So don't take too long in making the decision, and if you have somebody that's interested, you know, get them on board, get a group together. This is the type of things that getting 3 or 4 couples together and going to these things is fantastic, because when you have that support, your peers that are thinking the same way you do, that are talking in the same language, that are communicating in the same way, it just helps so much more. So I urge you, if you have any questions or anything like that, to get a hold of us. I know I'm a little bit over time already. We had promised to do it in just 1 hour, and we're a little bit over. But you have, once again, our information below. And Pamela, I don't know if you want to close off with anything.
No, I just really invite you to be brave, be brave, be bold, and you know, it's really worth it to get some of these tools. And this business of diving into the deeper stuff is not as fearsome as I know some people might think it sounds. Really, the risk is not doing the work, because that's when things can get really unpleasant. Doing the work is actually the less painful, the easier, softer way for anyone who has any trepidation about the difficulty with the deeper stuff. So I guess that's all I want to say about that.
All right, I guess with that, we'll say goodbye. And once again, I want to congratulate you for sticking by and staying with us for the whole seminar. We are making it, we're going to be making it available for, if you want to send it to somebody, so just get a hold of us and we'll be forwarding you the links where you can watch the webinar. Thank you, Pamela, so much for being here, and thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you at the conference.
Looking forward to seeing you.
Bye-bye.